Hey, what is up, mortals? It is Bone Loss here with a new video for you. Welcome to part 1 of What If Deku Had Full Counter. I just wanted to greet you guys by saying sit back and relax. You're in for a treat. So we begin. Izuku, the 2-year-old child of Hisashi Midoriya and the late Inko Midoriya, was playing with building blocks while his father made lunch. The widowed father did his best at cooking despite it not being his specialty. Hey, Green Bean, food's ready.
Okay.
The green-haired tyke climbed onto a chair as Hisashi set the meal out in front of him. Ever since his last and final trip from America, Hisashi took a temporary leave of absence from pro-hero work and did the paperwork side of things at his cousin's agency. Rei Todoroki was also very helpful with her advice on raising children. With all honesty, the older Midoriya would be completely lost without the mother of four's help. Hisashi started to reminisce about his time as Kyo, the Spitfire hero. It had been 2 years since he fought any crime, and he missed that part of himself. He felt like he could be doing so much more if he were out on the beat and not in a cubicle filling out reports. Hisashi made up his mind and decided to give his cousin a call.
Moshi Moshi, this is Todoroki.
Hey, Todoroki. It's Midoriya. Hope I'm not bothering you.
If you'd called any sooner, you would have been. What do you need?
You've got a few sidekick positions open, right? As good as I am at paperwork, I want to get back into action.
Oh, really? Little Kyo thinks he can play with the number 2 hero.
I don't know. Is the number 2 hero able to grow a real beard? A tense moment of quiet holds before both men laugh. Despite being cousins, Hisashi and Enji were more like brothers.
As long as parenting hasn't made you soft, Hisashi, then I've seen what you can do.
I can get back in shape quickly. The only issue I have is finding a sitter for Izuku. None of the sitters I've interviewed seem willing to work with me, and I'd worry if I left Izuku at a daycare.
That's annoying. Yes? With Hisashi? Fine, here.
Hisashi could hear the phone changing hands.
Hello, Hisashi.
Moshi Moshi, Rei, how are you?
I'm okay. I overheard the conversation, and I thought I'd bring up that we have a spare room here you and Izuku are always welcome to use.
No, I wouldn't want to intrude.
Nonsense. Enji originally thought of the idea, and I'm all for it. Besides, I think Shota would like to have someone around his age to play with.
Hisashi thought about it as he looked at his son. Izuku had finished his food and was watching his dad talk on the phone. The 2-year-old smiled, Hisashi seeing the cheerful ghost of his beloved.
Hello? Are you still there?
Yes, sorry about that. Thank you so much. I promise I'll repay you for your kindness. Rei insisted that repayment wasn't necessary. Within a week, the Midoriyas were moved into the Todoroki residence. Izuku was a little bashful around his extended family at first, but warmed up to them eventually, especially Shoto and Fuyumi. Despite the facade of a happy and loving family, Hisashi knew that there was no love behind Enji and Rei's marriage. That's usually how quirk marriages worked out. But Rei loved her children all the same, and, at least to Hisashi, seemed to love Enji too. Hisashi's heart ached whenever he saw Rei smile at her children and husband. Even with how much time had passed, Hisashi still missed Inko terribly. One day, Hisashi overheard Enji training Toya. He watched the two and immediately disapproved of what his cousin was doing. He was pushing the boy too far beyond his limits, borderline abuse. Suppressing his fuming anger with a boyish smile, Hisashi approached the two. Hey, Enji. Izuku said he wants to play with you.
Does it look like I have time for that?
Come on, it's not that hard to be a decent uncle. Although he could see the hidden meaning behind his cousin's words, Enji left to entertain his nephew.
I misjudged you. You'll never be strong enough to surpass All Might.
Once the number 2 hero was gone, Hisashi turned his fatherly concern to Toya.
What an asshole, am I right? You're not wrong. How do you stand that guy?
Years of practice, I guess. Hisashi carefully looked at his nephew's arms, examining the burns. From what he saw, it looked like the young man couldn't handle the intensity of his quirk. It disheartened him and made him wish he could do more than just bandage the wounds. I know it's none of my business, but could you explain what he meant by surpassing All Might?
It's the only reason he had any of us. He wants so desperately for someone of his blood to pass All Might in power. Only cares about his status as a hero.
This sparked a type of anger in Hisashi he didn't know he could feel towards his cousin. He knew Enji had a cold personality and was dead set on his dream to be number 1, but to force that dream onto a child? He had some choice words for Enji, but for now, his priority was Toya. Would you want me to help you with training? Toya was skeptical at first as he examined his uncle. During the time of living with the Todorokis, the fire breather was very kind and compassionate to him and his siblings. Hisashi was considerate and would help out his mom with just about anything, even if it was something he wasn't particularly good at. He found it hard to believe that this man in front of him and his father were related.
Sure.
For the next few hours, Hisashi taught his nephew what he knew about controlling fire and the basics of dragon-style martial arts. Many more training sessions were held since Toya preferred Hisashi's nurturing teaching style as opposed to his father's. Before anyone realized it, 1.5 years had passed since the Midoriya and Todoroki families started living under one roof. Toya had greatly improved his quirk handling and was picking up Hisashi's martial arts very well, which made the fire breather proud. Hisashi even helped Fuyumi and Natsuo understand their quirks better, despite being elemental opposites. Izuku had grown very close to all his cousins, especially Shoto. The two shared a yearning to become heroes and were fans of the #1 hero. Rei encouraged the boys and told them that they could become any kind of hero they wanted to be. Hisashi would prefer his son not to go down that path, but never once discouraged him. There was a day that Kiyo went on patrol solo while Endeavor was off duty. Shoto, despite only being a little older than 3, had already started showing signs of having a hybridized quirk, and Enji wanted to begin his training in earnest. Izuku was also involved in the training. Since the green-haired boy was older than Shoto, Endeavor stood to believe that he too would start showing signs of a quirk soon. He took the two boys and put them through the same training Toya used to go through. "I'm home." The Todoroki kids greeted their uncle kindly. The Spitfire hero noticed that neither Shoto nor Izuku were present.
Dad!
Izuku ran to his father with tears in his eyes.
Oh my... Izuku, what happened?
The worried father examined his crying child. It looked like the boy had bruises and small burns. There weren't anything severely damaging or life-threatening, but it disconcerted Hisashi all the same.
Uncle Enji wanted to train Sho-chan and me, but he was really mean. And when Aunt Rei tried to make him stop, he hit her too.
Izuku's crying worsened as he hugged his dad. A fit of flaming anger burned in Hisashi's eyes, and everyone saw it. "Kids, could you take care of Izuku for me? I need to have a word with your father." Hisashi marched to the training room and opened the door with heroic conviction. Endeavor stood over his wife and son. They feared the #2 hero as though he were a vile villain. "Enji, we need to talk." It wasn't a request. The staring contest between cousins gave Rei time to grab Shoto and escape. Hisashi closed the door behind them. "It's been a while since I've seen you this angry, Spitfire." "I haven't had any reason to be this angry until now." "What in the actual hell is wrong with you? Beating up children and calling it training? There is nothing you can say to justify that." "Shoto has the perfect quirk to achieve my dream, and you should be thanking me for trying to toughen up that son of yours. He'll never be a hero if he doesn't grow up already." Forked flames danced from Hisashi's mouth as his vision turned red. Enji didn't expect his cousin's punch to wind him as it did. The #2 hero was hunched over and gasping as Hisashi drove his knee into his cousin's face. Enji stumbled back as blood dripped from his nose and burned in his flaming facial hair. "You don't even realize how lucky you are! You have a wife that truly loves you and children that want to know you, but you're too busy using them for your own glory!" Charred smoke arose from the corners of Hisashi's lips. His menacing gaze contrasted to the rage quelling up within him as the heated argument carried on. Endeavor's poise was offset slightly by Hisashi's remark. His fists tightened by the disrespect. The Spitfire hero continued to beat up his cousin as Enji fought back. "Do you know what I would give to have what you have? I'd give up my hero license and my quirk altogether if it meant I could give Izuku his mother back!" Enji threw jets of flame at his attacker. Hisashi ran through them, unflinching. He tried to tackle Endeavor, but the bigger man reversed the grapple and threw Hisashi against the wall. Enji was surprised that Hisashi was able to stay on his feet. "Why live out your dreams through your kids anyway? They should be allowed to live their own lives, not make up for what you've failed to gain. You know the weaknesses of my quirk, just as I know yours. I have limits, but Shoto, he's perfect! With mine and his mother's quirks, he'll be unstoppable! He's a child, not a trophy!" Brilliant orange flames expelled from Hisashi's mouth. Enji fought fire with fire, holding back the storming flames with his own. The clashing flames licked and burned at the wooden paneling of the room. Hisashi pushed his flames hotter and hotter. His fire breath turned a stunning shade of blue as he used his ultimate move, Dragon's Wrath! The Spitfire hero marched forward as his flames pushed Enji back. Enji sidestepped the blue flames, causing them to crash against the wall. Hisashi stopped his fire breath and maneuvered alongside the wall, leaping and ducking between individual fire attacks. Hisashi attacked with his breath weapon once more, aiming at his cousin's face! The bright flash of light caused Endeavor to close his eyes. When the flames died down and Endeavor opened his eyes again, Hisashi was nowhere to be seen. Enji's eyes scanned his surroundings to find his oppressor. His panicked breath began to cloud his judgment as time went on with no sight. Hisashi leapt off the wall and kicked Endeavor in the head, causing him to crumble to the floor and allowing Hisashi to pin him down. The smaller man glared into his cousin's eyes as smoke fumed from his mouth with each exhale. He took in a breath, his jaw unclenched, allowing the fumes inside to build up. Enji's sight was clouded as fear began to settle in as he saw the flammable gas gathering in the back of his cousin's throat. But instead of unleashing a torrent of fire on the number 2 hero's face, Hisashi simply exhaled, smoke and butane fuming through his nose and clenched teeth. You will become the number 1 hero one of these days. I know because you're too stubborn and headstrong to not reach your goal. But while you're busy chasing your white whale, your kids are growing up without a present father. So while you still live and breathe, at least try to be a decent husband and father to your wife and kids. That's rich coming from a widow. Hisashi punched Enji in the throat for that comment. The bigger man struggled to breathe as Hisashi stood and began to leave the room. I found a place for Izuku and myself, so we'll be out of your hair soon. Hisashi left the room, shutting the door behind him. He found himself short of breath as pain consumed his throat. Unfortunately, this was one of the side effects of overusing his quirk, and utilizing Dragon's Wrath didn't help. Hisashi returned to the kitchen and saw Fuyumi and Rei taking care of Izuku and Shoto. Natsuo was handing his mom and sister what they needed while Toya made some chamomile tea. All eyes turned to Hisashi when he sat at the table. Sorry for the disturbance. This video is sponsored by Skillshare. With the services Skillshare provides, you can get access to many in-depth tutorial videos on basically anything you want to learn. Each class that they have is bound to help you with your creative endeavors. Do you want to learn how to make videos like this one? Do you want to learn how to write scripts or edit audio? Skillshare has you covered. And with our link, you can have a 14-day free trial. So what are you waiting for? Click the link now and get 14 days worth of classes free. Link in description below. Moving day for the Midoriyas came, and very few were happy about it. Hisashi let Rei and the kids know that if they ever felt unsafe and needed a place to stay, they're more than welcome to stay at his place, anytime. It was a bigger place than their previous ones, so there was no need to worry about space. Izuku hugged Shoto. Both boys were sad and crying at the move. Hisashi told Toya to keep up with his training, but to not overdo things. Fire is dangerous, his blue flames especially so, and he didn't want to see the boy unnecessarily hurt. Toya agreed before embracing his uncle. Enji wasn't there to see his cousin off. The fire wielders had been awkwardly avoiding each other since their argument. Despite that, Hisashi still worked for the number 2 hero. He recognized Endeavor's value as a pro-hero, but that didn't stop him from looking into other agencies. Although Izuku didn't make a lot of friends in his preschool, there was one kid he enjoyed hanging out with, Katsuki Bakugo. Despite the blonde's fiery personality, Hisashi was glad that his son made a friend. Bakugo even became interested in the Spitfire hero when he found out an interesting side effect caused by his quirk.
Spicy food doesn't bother you?
Yep.
I bet I could handle more spice than you.
Really now?
Hell yeah!
All right. Hisashi grabbed a jalapeno and a glass of milk from the kitchen, handing the pepper to Bakugo. If you can eat the whole pepper without needing to drink the milk, I'll believe you. Bakugo accepted the challenge before confidently taking a big bite of the pepper as Hisashi and Izuku watched. It didn't take long for the child to go red in the face and down the glass of milk. Hisashi chuckled, telling Bakugo that he'll have to try again when he's older, before finishing off the jalapeno himself. Bakugo vowed he'd find or make something so spicy that the old man couldn't handle it. Not counting Enji, the Todorokis were common guests in the Midoriya household, especially Toya. He'd visit about once every week, usually spending the night. He'd hang out with little Izuku and talk to Hisashi about his training and other things that were going on. The Spitfire hero noticed the recurring burns the young man was getting from training were getting worse. He'd suggested to Toya to hold off on training for a while so he could heal properly.
Mom wants me to stop training altogether. I don't get it. Fuyumi and Natsuo can use their quirks just fine. And Shoto, he was born lucky with his fire and ice. Why am I the only one born wrong?
Hisashi put his hands on his nephew's shoulders and looked at him with nothing but sincerity. You weren't born wrong, Toya. Of all the element-based quirks, fire is the most tricky for many reasons. One of those reasons comes from its duality. Fire can be a comforting light that pushes back the cold and keeps the monsters at bay. But without guidance, it can consume and destroy just as easily. I want to help you make your quirk that protective light, but you can't do that by burning yourself out. Although frustrated, Toya nodded and hugged his uncle. Hisashi ran his fingers through the young man's hair.
Dad, I got my PJs on. Can you tuck me in?
Izuku entered the guest room in his All Might onesie, his favorite All Might plushie in hand. All right, Green Bean, why don't you tell Toya goodnight? The small green-haired boy hugged his cousin and told him goodnight, with Toya reciprocating. Hisashi tucked the boys in before turning in for the night. A few weeks had passed since then. Hisashi and Izuku had finished eating dinner when there was a desperate knock on their front door. Hisashi was horrified at what he saw on the other side.
Toya!
Obsidian char burned like a chrysalis over the young man's body. A blazing blue emanated underneath the cracks of the charred shell of skin. The Spitfire hero gingerly took the boy in his arms and brought him inside. Izuku was scared upon seeing his cousin in that state. Izuku, get the bright orange case from under my bed. Go. The child did as he was ordered as his father carefully laid Toya on the couch. The young man winced at every movement, which broke Hisashi's heart as he looked over the damage. Hisashi couldn't believe that the boy was alive, let alone conscious. Toya's nerves were probably beyond repair at this point. You need a hospital. Toya shook his head in denial. He wasn't willing to go. Hisashi was going to try to talk sense into his nephew when Izuku came out with the burn treatment case. Hisashi would normally use its contents on himself, but it looked like he was going to treat someone else this time. Very good, Izuku. I need you to grab something else for me. Go grab a bottle of water from the kitchen, quickly. Izuku ran off and returned quickly with the item. Hisashi opened the case and pulled out gauze, bandages, painkillers, cool compresses, and everything else he would need. There was a problem. Toya's face was half covered in obsidian char. He couldn't breathe well, and with the toxic fumes entering his lungs, he wouldn't last much longer. He set what he didn't need aside and held the bottle of water beside him before he braced himself for what he had to do next.
I'm sorry, Toya.
Hisashi's nails dug underneath the burned skin as he began clawing the bits of char from Toya's face. Muffled screams rumbled from underneath. He began to apply the water after each peel. Sorry. The char crumbled more as Hisashi made it towards his nose. The echoed mumbled carried on even louder. I'm sorry. He was careful not to dig too deep. He could already feel the dehydrated blood peel off as skin tore away. I'm so sorry. It was finally over. Toya's mouth and nose cleared up. His breathing was light. Bloody tears dripped down along his cheeks. Hisashi administered the painkillers now that there was access to do so. After a short while, the young man became less lucid. Whether it was from the drugs kicking in or the amount of pain he was feeling, Hisashi wasn't sure. Izuku stayed in the living room, unable to turn away from the horror show. As his father bandaged his cousin's damaged body, he wasn't sure what else he could do. After a few hours, Toya was bandaged and in a more restful state. Hisashi put a light blanket over the young man. He told Toya to shout if he needed anything before tucking in his son. The fire breather passed out as soon as he laid in bed. Little Izuku, his All Might plushie in hand, went to his half-conscious cousin.
Toya, are you awake? Yeah.
Izuku handed Toya his plushie.
My All Might plushie always makes me feel better, so you can have him so you can feel better too.
Toya weakly mumbled a quiet thanks as Izuku handed over his favorite toy. The ringing phone awoke Hisashi the next morning. He picked it up tiredly and was met with a scared Rei.
Hisashi! Something happened to Toya! He might be dead!
What? No, he's hurt but not dead. This confused Rei as Hisashi walked into the living room. Yeah, he's right. Here. Only an All Might plushie and an overturned blanket were on the couch. Hisashi frantically searched his home for his nephew but came up with nothing. Toya was gone! Missing person posters were plastered everywhere. Toya couldn't have gone far given his condition. Izuku had nightmares for weeks after his cousin disappeared, while Hisashi picked up his old habit of smoking to cope with his worry and sleepless nights. Rei and her children mourned Toya as though he had passed. Enji didn't change or show any sign of sorrow for his son. This was the last of Rei's sanity. She scarred Shoto and was dumped in a mental institute. This led to Hisashi's last straw with Endeavor. What do you want, Kyo? I know this is sudden and unprofessional, but as of now, I'm resigning as your sidekick. What? Over these past few years, I've realized that you and I have different values and goals. I don't agree with all that you do, and I don't think I can keep working with you, knowing what I know. I fear that our inevitable clashing will affect our work, and I don't want that to happen. I'd rather part on moderately good terms as opposed to burning bridges completely. Kyo bowed respectfully to his former boss. I apologize for any inconvenience this causes. Good day. Kyo left the agency. Endeavor shouted to him, though he was met with silence. Thank you all for sticking around, and I hope that you enjoyed. Before you leave, we would just like to let you know that We the Celestials has many other channels for your entertainment and viewing purposes. All the information you'll need is right below here in the description, so feel free to check out all the other incredible projects our team creates. Secondly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details will be in the description below. That's all for today's video, so goodbye and have a divine day.